All right. Hello, everybody out there. This is Roleplay Cafe. Dell and I are kind of touching base on some of the changes to the game. We're going to have a candid conversation. I think we've done this before on the channel, back when we were first brainstorming stuff.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, cool.
Sorry, on my end too. So.
I thought, holy cow, somebody's just come in here.
I didn't know that was okay.
And we might even do a couple of playtest scenarios. Maybe not a full. We won't do like a game, but I'm thinking some scenario tests. Right?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay. So D12 we both agree on. I got all. Fortunately, I found the email. Apparently, Brian sent me an email months and months and months and months ago with a PDF copy with Anthony's edits visible, so I could see them.
Okay.
And so today I found that PDF copy and was able to do all of the edits based on Anthony's. So had I been able to get that, I don't know when he sent it. I didn't look at the date, but it had to be months ago. So I went through all the Dark Age of emails that I got from you and from Brian looking for any files that I might have missed. Anyway, it might have been you that sent it. I don't know who sent the PDF copy, but I could see Anthony's remarks. So I was able to get that finished. So that's totally done.
Yeah. We have some breakup here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine now.
Okay.
You froze up for a second there.
Okay. So I was able to get all of those edits done, and then I was able to add a few things. I was able to change it all to D12, all the difficulty values for all the monsters, beasts, and for the difficulty value default chart. All that stuff's been reset. So it's still going to take a couple of play tests to see how that works, but for the most part, I did make sure that I clarified you do not have to pick a profession. That was always an option. You could put your points in wherever you wanted to start a character. You didn't have to pick a profession.
Yeah, it's more of a suggestion.
But I didn't. I literally put no profession now, so you know how to select gear, right? Because getting a profession gives you gear, so you'd have to know how to select your starting pieces of gear. So that's it. Yeah. So my biggest concern from the other night, and this happened back when I ran the game last year when we did a Dredgewater test, and I ran the game, and Eric had that one-on-one battle on the had that one-on-one contest with the Viking in Dredgewater Fields, and it was very.
He was playing the blacksmith, I believe.
Yes, right? Yeah, brilliant session, great session, but. I don't notice it when we're having a mass combat or we're having a mass kind of narrative thing. But when we end up with a player in a one-on-one situation, we end up with this really bizarre. And if you watch back our game the other night, at the time I thought, basically you say, okay, Jory, describe how you're going to fight Tugga, right? And Jory says, oh, I'm going to do this, and hit him with my axe. And you say, okay, roll. And he rolls, and then he says 12, and you say, okay, Tugga takes a hit, and he's kind of hurting. You see blood splurt, and then go ahead, Jory. What are you gonna do? And then Jory says, "Well, I'm gonna hit him with my axe again and kick him in the nuts." And you go roll, and he rolls. 10. All that happens is he's just rolling. Literally boom, 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 boom. So, and it struck me that that's part of the reasons the combat feels a little strange is players aren't naturally cued as to when they're at threat or when they're the threat. I think we should have offensive task rolls and defensive task rolls. So, for instance, they still roll everything. It's still narrative. But at the end of the round, when all the players have done their thing, then the presenter would naturally narrate what the enemy's doing as an attack turn for the presenter against everybody on the battlefield. And then they get to roll another task check. And they have to succeed, to avoid taking damage. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, that's essentially just the classic turn-based combat.
Well, except that but we're not rolling the dice. But yes, it is definitely going to, but it's going to be a more natural way in which players recognize what they can narrate, what they can't narrate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's new on me. I'd have to literally go back and look at some of that. I know what you're referencing though, because he did do a series of successful roles,
Oh, that
and
doesn't matter. Whether they were successful or failures, it's just roll, roll, roll. There's no, and again, it's supposed to be if he wins, he narrates. If he loses, we narrate, right?
yeah,
So maybe that will work out better if he knew what he needed to roll, right? Had you said to him, "You're going to need a 10 to hit this guy," and then he starts his narration, he would have been able to narrate that he did damage, and instead of kind of waiting for you to prompt him that he
it would have queued him off.
right. So I mean,
One thing
I
that
don't I like the one roll will work, but we just got to have some. We're going to have to give the players some information, I think, so they so he's not totally.
Yeah,
He's not
it
stunning there.
allows for he doesn't know his. Yeah, no, I can agree. I can agree with that. It felt a little. It felt that way.
Right, it
We
could
were
be
rolling.
we just haven't played in a long time, so there's no flow to it yet.
Well, you got to see. I was wanting to do more of a discussion about what I was trying to do as whenever I was operating the game. Like I said, I push into different areas when I'm trying to do it, and a lot of it, like I wasn't calling out. I traditionally never call out the number
Right,
that you have
EV,
to get
right.
past.
Right.
Yeah, I know. And to me, in my mind, at least, maybe this is showing at least that may be a problem. Obviously, like you're pointing out, because what I was trying to do was lean it toward the narrative cues and keep it in the narrative space instead of the numerical. So whenever I'm trying to describe it, it was a challenge to say, how am I describing this individual where it would give an impression of a higher difficulty level that you're facing? And then he has to make that little innate judgment call to say, is this really worth it? Instead of me saying like, look, this dude has 17 on his forehead. This is what you're going to do.
Oh, I
you know
agree.
what I mean? So that's what I was trying to do, but you're right. It totally it kind of leaves them a field.
Right. Well, at least when we're playtesting, we've got to kind of be obvious so we can do the math. So we know something's wrong. Right. Or we can kind of, but I agree with you. The goal of the game would be to use ultimately adjectives to describe, ultimately not just say, okay, your DV today is 12, roll the dice, right? I mean, but for instance, if you narrate you're jumping from the horse to the wagon, right? And you notice with me, I don't give you a number, but I'll say this is hard. That's how this is gonna be hard for you. That should, if you've read your rule book,
words.
You should know. Okay, that's about 8 or 9. Matter of fact, in the new rule book, it's a range difficulty, so it could be that way they don't know exactly what the difficulty is. It could be 2 or 3, it could be 4 or 5, it could be 6 or 7.
Yeah, it's a little block of
There's
an area.
There's a little bit of wiggle room there, right? And because I prefer that it's a conversation. So I prefer that exactly what you and Jory had the other night, all that's correct. But I think there was this, in a way, there's this kind of hiccup when you say, go ahead and roll. He rolls, and he knows the 12 hits. So, I mean, he knows the critical's a critical. So, but, if you roll a 6, you don't quite know what I can say next. What can I say about that, right? Unless you just flat said, you failed, and then I go, okay, well, I'm face down in the mud, but the goal is, of course, hot potato. If I fail, you narrate. If I succeed, I narrate. Vice versa, right?
Well, you're right. I should have used those adjectives to describe, to set the at least pace, where I wasn't using those at all. And that is where it, like I said, I wanted to push into areas or try different things. It could be, after all, it's a play test to find out how far we can go in certain directions. Or if you think that something will work, you put it to test and find out if it's failing. But like that will totally, its fact is that being a one roll system to where either that the narration is passed from one to the other, that has to be something you have to key off of.
Right.
And like you're saying, when you don't do, I was going to mention a little bit earlier, instead of us having, because we have a base of creature difficulty levels, but in there, it needs to be, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly, like you're saying, like jump from the horse to the wagon, a difficulty or examples of difficulties that you face, because it's not only creatures that you face but difficult. And this would lend to more of the different professions, not just focused on combat examples, but to say,
well, it is. I mean,
this is
in the book. I do give an example of difficulty, and then I give a list of difficulty numbers. in the book.
Yeah, yeah, of what they
I don't
made.
know if I
Maybe.
give the horse leaping from a horse to a wagon. I don't know if I give that example, but we may need a couple of examples that aren't combat, absolutely. But I was telling my wife today, our game works beautifully, in my opinion, uh, with a single role system with narration, because the GM still has a traditional role. We gotta set up what they're dealing with. So if I say, okay, you're looking at, if everybody's read the book and they kind of know the description of Dredgewater Palisade is 14 feet high, and they kind of get an idea. But a lot of players are going to come to the game. They're not going to have read Dredgewater. They're not going to know. So when they do come across an old Roman ruin, you're going to describe some of the actual details of the Roman ruin, so the players have some understanding what they're facing. That's traditional. But then players are free to go from there. Well, I'm getting on my rope, and I'm going to try to sling my rope up and climb to the second level of this ruin where I see that open hole, whatever the case may be. That's
Yeah.
traditional. That won't change. And as I told my wife today, it's conceivable if we're doing this the way I think we will do, you won't be rolling the dice a lot. In combat, you will be rolling it the most, because every round there's going to be something, whether you're trying to intimidate, whether you're trying to disarm them, whether you're trying to kill them, whether you're trying to get away from them. We're going to be rolling a die for every one of those declared actions, unless it's like a character that's so powerful that you can almost guarantee, I'm going to grab this guy and apprehend him, and he's a 2 difficulty level, and you say, oh, that's easy, and he says my combat rating's a 2. You got him. You grabbed him. You've got him under your control. What do you want to do with him? Oh, I'm going to sit him down. I'm going to tie him up. If he automatically succeeds, don't roll. Some things we're not going to roll for, right?
Oh yeah. That's always been standard, but that's why
Right.
that's even more reason why I said the D12 was better, because when
Yep.
when you have those modifiers that it's easy, it's easy enough for the situation. If it warrants it, that you don't have to roll.
Right.
A lot of, like you're saying, if it's not really contested, like combat is straight contested, or when you're maybe bargaining, or
Right.
or when you're in a noble thing. But when you have time and you're trying to do something,
Right.
it's apparent
Yeah.
if you can or if you can't, really.
Right.
Especially
I mean-
just looking at the modifiers and
That's
looking
right.
at the body or looking at the mind, and you say, no, you got this. Only under stress or duress
Yep.
might you need, or a shortening
Yeah.
of time, might you need to roll to say,
And all
this
of that
will
is
fail.
in the purview of the presenters, how the presenter wants to run the game. So there's nothing wrong with any of that.
Yeah.
And there was nothing wrong with what you did the other night. I just dawned on me, the combat, not for us in the mass go, with all 3 of us going and talking, and we're fighting a mass combat. That all seemed to flow really naturally. The one-on-one thing, I think, felt like, it seemed like maybe he wanted more information from you.
Oh yeah.
Maybe he thought he was going to get.
Definitely. And what's interesting is when we go into the mass combat, because I know we did it differently before. You know what I mean? You've had that when we played the Conan game. Mass combat was
I did
different.
it in Dredgewater,
It was-
when you guys all
Yeah.
played that last Dredgewater, when the Vikings showed up at the Lord's Fate, the spring harvest.
oh
fate.
yeah, yeah. I remember.
That was all mass combat. You guys were firing from the walls of the palisade while Eric the blacksmith was on the field fighting the big guy.
Yeah, and granted, this was more of
Mhm.
experimental to
Yeah.
what I was trying to do, and I was trying to push and see how that would go whenever
Yeah.
you're dealing with a situation. And what I was doing was kind of on the fly in effect,
Right.
because I was trying to see if any of you, like almost a countdown beacon to where the Lord, because if the head of their army gets taken out, then everybody runs, like I said.
Yep.
So I was more basing it on, let's have a count of either one side winning or the other side.
Right.
And granted, I was rolling dice too to find out if there was a sway from one to the other, and it was more or less depending on y'all too. If y'all were doing good in combat, there was
Yeah.
more. There was more of a sway to that. But I knew it wouldn't last too long until one of you approached and maybe got a hold of
Mhm.
the leader of this
Mhm.
of the enemy. So that's the way I was at least playing
Yeah,
that.
that's ultimately how the game's designed. So it's just you
Yeah.
have in your head, like for instance, for that mass combat you guys had in the last one I ran, I had in my mind so every time at the wall you guys did something and were successful, it lowered the combat value of the head Viking that Eric ultimately ended up facing. So by the time Eric got to that
Yes.
big bad, you'd already routed many of the Vikings. You'd already kind of swayed the battlefield. So it was a difficulty number that was not affected. If you guys were rolling critical successes, it affected it. If you were doing critical failures, it affected it. But there's also a number of damage that the whole army could take. So as you guys were successful, it would just slowly chop down the health. And at some point, I knew it would trigger that, they get down to the final 6 points or something. That's going to trigger the option for Eric on the battlefield to actually get to the head Viking. There was no way he could get to him because it was too crowded. Right, and slowly as they lost and Vikings were dying and running away, there became an opening for him to go after him if he wanted to, and he took it, which is similar to what you did the other night. Just you might have used slightly different numbers or slightly different trigger, right? The trigger, you could have literally said the trigger is going to be 6 turns, and I'm going to set this die 6 here, and every turn they go, I'm going to take it down to 5. Take it down to 4, and then when it got to 1, you would have said, "Okay, after this turn."
It was similar. It was around 6 turns.
Yeah, that's all you had to do.
That wasn't premeditated, but I knew that it was going to, from the count of people on there,
right?
That I stated about 30 to 40 or 28 to 40,
right?
That it was almost double, but
right.
But that even affected to how many was surrounding each one of y'all.
I mean, we're not going to write that in the rule book. That's going to be something that GMs when they play. They're going to see how flexible and how simple the system is to do that, right? We don't need to put that in the rule book. By the way, here's the many, many different ways you can conduct the DV in combat. We define mobs and packs. We define individuals. We define critical hits. We define the monster block, like the werewolf's critical hit, what it does to them. So that's one thing we do want to pay attention to. Hopefully when we publish this and we meet at a convention to run some games for the world at a convention, we're going to want to run it the way it's written so people can make sure that they know how to run it.
That's correct. I still feel like it's under, we're still tweaking it. So there's a lot of little questions subconsciously, even in my mind, like when I'm running that. And I know we can zoom out and you can go, you can zoom in. Yep. So if I needed to summarize that battle, it'd have been more like that. But I felt at that time, because I felt like I was dealing with another thing, because of the berserker rage that was built into the character, in Jorian's character, and that Justin's character came into, that I had to say what was the clarity of mind of them being able to even notice. Like Jorian couldn't even notice, at least in my estimation, whether he was fighting friend or foe. Right. But Justin could. He had clarity of mind, and he could even go to his colleague, or and back to back if he wanted to help them. So I was trying to, in my mind, I was trying to weigh all of those options too as we played along. But I knew, I knew I factored in a luck thing too when he had 12. Yeah. Whether where they actually stumbled upon, somebody that was over the army that could, they could do that, Yeah. But
it all worked perfectly. I thought everything went fine. I mean, the only, again, that was, everything worked exactly as it's designed.
Yeah. And even at the end, by when he did that, I said, well, you hit him. And then I was like, he just did 3 guys in a row like this, stomping through them, pinned him to the wall. And with the roll, it was determined how many people actually noticed this and their reaction. So they started chanting his name, which is going to intimidate the other guy. Well, you saw it all played out, but anyway, that was what the scene was feeding me, and it will feed the presenter into doing what he thinks. But you have those tools at your disposal to say, mind, how is this affecting other people around you? Right. And the characters play off of that too. So there was a lot, and I wanted to speak earlier, like we did during the after chat, on my little video about how things were with. I had pigeonholed myself in the corner with not giving you guys your player agency more so than you. It was restricted by the fact that whenever I sat down, I put you on a boat, and then I realized almost too late. I said, Vikings. Now there's going to be 50 Vikings on this ship, and they're not going to be in some kind of you know what I mean? Yeah. So then I said, oh, what do I do? And then I come up with these 2 guys, of course. It worked. Yeah. And then I have to make them. So it's like I had more of a heavy load, but it still wasn't overwhelming that I couldn't get past it. No. I knew I was trying to accelerate it to say, like, look, there's got to be a situation to where They
But
either
you know,
step in or
and this is
down.
the danger of also. Sometimes you don't want to be in first person. Sometimes sometimes we just want to say, listen, you guys have been on this ship now for 4 weeks. You're getting close to the promised land. You're
Yeah.
and you've witnessed for the last few days Tugga, the two leaders fighting. You could have just given us a summation, and there's a lot of Vikings on the ship a little antsy because the two leaders are at odds, right? I mean, there's all kinds. There's a million ways you could have set that up. So,
yeah. You're right. You're right. And like I said,
you didn't do it wrong. Like I said, I hope that just pointing
no, but
it
I
out.
did it in more detail.
Yeah.
I did it in more detail. And if I'd had time to think about it, but that's what literally this stuff was occurring to me as we sat down. And I said, wait a minute, they're going to ship. Oh my God, this is this. And then I was painting myself in a corner. So I had to watch, but I still had the tools to get through it, even though I knew the whole time I was doing that. I said, nobody comes to a role-playing game to hear somebody else talk. It's like going to play basketball and the dude's in the corner. This is my ball. Nobody else can play. And you're like, why are we here?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to
but traditionally, a lot of sessions start with a lot of, I call them info dumps, but I've been at more tables from GMs that spend a lot of time doing an info dump at the beginning, because it's difficult sometimes not to, especially in a one-off, because there's no. I mean, if this was like our third session of these characters on a campaign, we would all be comfortable in the space and where we were at last session, and so it's always tough when you just launch something, right?
Well, I mean, honestly, like when I started that, I was clueless as to whoever was on the ship. I was filling those roles as we were playing.
Mm-hmm.
And then not only that, but I was having to pay attention to the random seeds that were cropping up. And I was having to also have a mind to fold them into the situation.
Right.
And then take consideration of y'all being subordinate to others on there. So you couldn't see, I don't like that.
Right.
In fact, I didn't like that feeling. It wasn't that I didn't have the tools to accomplish it. I felt secure that the game gave me the tools.
Yep.
But what I did was I was playing the game myself while y'all were watching me play it. You see what I'm saying? Until I get to a certain point. And but I knew I was already too far in. And I said, no, I should have let them, you know what I mean? It should have been just like you're saying. I should have summarized that and gone down. But I was looking at the random seeds. I was going like, okay, well, this is happening. But it was really, you see what I'm saying? I know.
But you could have done anything. You could have done exactly what you did and then rolled archers. And instead of describing arrows hitting the boat, you could have had arrows take Tugga out.
Yeah.
While they're having a fight, arrow through the head, and Tugga. You know what I mean? You could have done anything. I mean, it's just narrative. Yeah. It's narrative juice, man, to set this crazy world we're going to be in, right?
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. So
because we already know Tugga's value. So for those who would be listening to this and say, dude, you can't just have an NPC, invent him, and kill him like that. Well, our rules, we have Viking Sea People leaders in the rules, so we know the difficulty values of a guy like Tugga. So you can quite literally say Tugga's a DV9, right? DV8.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, he has 5 health or 6 health or 8 health, whatever it is based on the book. So it's not difficult to make a monster instantly.
Yeah, and with this D12 situation, like I said, we know it goes from 3 to 11 within inside the confines of the degrees. But then if you shift that up to where it's going to like 19 all down. That's when you're getting above average competency.
Oh,
that's
no,
when
we're talking about repute 7. And remember, I have in the rule books, and this is something we forgot the other night we were talking. At the bestiary, I say, this is not all the monsters that exist. Feel free to make monsters any way you want, and I define how you do that. And I also be aware that when you have a party of repute 7 characters, you want to push the DV values up 3 points. Up to 3 points. So we define all that in the rules. It's just I haven't looked at the rule book in 11 months. I doubt you've looked at the rule book in 11 months. So I think we forgot our own rules. But look how well it worked, even though we just remembered the gist of how to do it, right?
Exactly. It went from, I'm serious, guys. I went from working to coming in the door to writing random seeds in a matter of 10 minutes.
It's perfect.
But I know enough about, you can go mist
Yeah.
and what's going to happen here. You can go, there was things on there that can conjure up the imagination
Well,
of
in
what
the
is
game, and
on
again,
exactly.
and the game can be played traditionally. You could have come in and said, I'm going to just put them in I'm going to put them in a basic, dungeon. They're going to do a couple of mile hex crawl into a little dungeon, and I'm just going to do a little dungeon crawl. The game still will feature player agency when it comes to narration, when it comes to what we choose to, whether you had a whole lot of random charts or not, right?
Oh, yeah. That's
You
the
could play
beauty of
this
it. You
game
can play it either
completely with a
way.
module, completely with a adventure plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. There's nothing stopping
The
you from
reason
doing
we
that.
don't, and the reason we're not going to write modules for it, is we don't. Here's the difference, and I'm going to be honest with you. We want players free, as you said today earlier in your video on the. You kind of hit on this. If I want to make my first entry level character, because you get 3 points to build your character, if I choose to put all 3 in prestige, I want a player to say, "Oh wow, holy shit, you're an entry level character with 3 prestige, right?" And I choose priest, okay, or whatever, nobleman gives me another prestige. I could conceivably start in Dredgewater with a first level, with an entry level character with a 4 prestige.
As an earl somewhere or what have you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That means that player, and this is why I won't write modules. I wouldn't want to write modules for a game. We don't know if you're going to make a blacksmith or a carpenter, right? We don't know, and we don't know. You may literally not engage. You may not go front up or engage certain events that are happening. It's just not what your character's about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
obviously, if there's a forest fire and it's raging toward Dredgewater, or whatever, a flood or something, your character's going to be affected by it. But your character may quite literally choose to fight the Viking. That one we did a while back with Dave and everybody. You guys went to negotiate with the Viking that had taken over, the other town. You guys could have literally, and you guys amassed an army on the travels. You remember that? You guys actually built an army on the march. You guys stopped farmers and peasants, and you said you've sworn fealty to to Washburn, and you guys would make a couple of rolls to see how many people joined you. By the time you got there, you had like 40 men with pitchforks, and right, you had an army. You could have laid siege to them. You could have said we're just going to assault them. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. There's variables. You guys get to choose how the hell you're going to navigate around with these variables, right?
That's what it's all about, because I don't have to use just brute force to get everything done. Right. If you're a nobleman and you have riches to you, you can do this. Like that one time I mentioned about being a merchant.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, why would you want it? I'm like, to me, this would be cool. I need to try to stay alive. I need to try to hire hirelings and guards to watch my caravan. I'm trying to argue down and barter for the lowest prices, find out which cities are selling what for the highest.
And you're a prime target for bandits, ruffians, sea people.
Yeah. See, I mean, this is just me. This is just me. Whatever I can conceptualize.
Yeah.
That I would like to do.
Dale, you could have a character that's what you do. And you're gonna run into the same threats that a soldier or a priest or a magic.
But you can handle them differently. Maybe you pay them off, or maybe you cut a deal, or hire Vikings to protect you from other Vikings.
And this is my issue with modules. Very often, they say they don't define how you're going to win, but they're weighted toward that game engine's. So, for instance, D&D 5e is pretty much weighted that you're going to have certain combats in certain areas. The module says, okay, here they're going to want to roll diplomacy. They're going to want to negotiate at this portion, use their diplomacy ratings to negotiate with the king. And then when they travel on, they're going to then go into combat with the dragon army. And the modules actually tell you when they're going to get to use diplomacy, when you should. That's not how all GMs are going to run it. Some GMs are going to call it out when a player thinks outside the box, right? So, and that's where players feel railroaded, because they're like, wait, when can I use diplomacy? You know, you got to
Now,
have a
now,
GM that's capable of saying, well, you can use diplomacy in this particular negotiation here, right?
yeah, and you need to have the freedom to play a character, and you know where his strengths are in this character.
Right.
That's what that's what I'm saying about your attributes. Where do you want to, in your even your character profession?
Mm-hmm.
Not that we have professions, but however you can dream up this character, what he does, but through
Yeah,
guile or through anything,
right.
what does he leverage
Right.
to get along with the
But
world?
to make it clear, we do have a societal class-based system. That one of the reasons we had to put in some choices so people understand that a prestige 1 is a freeman, a prestige, you know, they can't be a priest and not have a prestige rating, right? Because there's certain societal class hierarchy that the game supports, and that's part of why we had to have some options so people knew that, oh, a noble actually has prestige out of the gate, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Because you can't have a player who's a craftsman peasant with no prestige saying, I want to talk to the king. The king's going to say,
good luck with that.
Dude, there's no audience for you, man. You know, and you want people to understand that when they start so they aren't frustrated later. Why the hell can't I see the king?
Yeah,
you know,
how do you
not
affect
everybody's
the
going
world?
to come in understanding this history or understanding this kind of nature of gaming. This isn't D&D, you know, where that kind of stuff just doesn't exist in D&D, right?
That might be something we need to clarify, or at least allude to, or make, like I was saying, some kind of a primer to some extent about the importance of different,
Yeah, I think
how
you're
the
right.
world
It's not so
works.
much our rules need it. We need a primer, or maybe we need a primer chapter. I don't know, but I think I'd like to trust that. I hate to say it, but I do think we have a pretty sophisticated people in the hobby. I think people who are buying these games off Drive Through RPG, or they're ordering them from Amazon or Lulu print on demand. You know, I just think it's a massive community of pretty smart people. They know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Not everybody who comes to your game will understand, you know, kind of a pseudo Dark Ages 900. And in ours, it's not going to be exactly that anyway. Like, for instance, you know, England at this time was fractional. I mean, it was broken up into multiple kingdoms. We just got 3 to simplify it. And then we got a lot of little peasant kings that think they could be kings, you know, to keep it diverse and interesting. But we have really 3 countries, you know, in our game. We have Eastumberland, we have Northwich, and we have Ireland, the island of Ireland. And that just keeps it simple. I didn't want to dissect the map into like 12 kingdoms, and you know, there can be all these little duchies and that kind of stuff. You know, we can create that. Like Dredgewater. Dredgewater's a fictional like duchy, right? Yeah. Whatever it's called.
But you can fill out your own map. I think everybody's map is going to be unique.
Exactly. And that's our other point, right?
Beauty of it.
I want to give people something so they can start and play. But I'm hoping they'll make their own damn. Their Dredgewater ain't gonna look like our Dredgewater in 5 weeks, right? If we play the campaign, our Dredgewater is gonna look totally different. And the random seeds and what the players choose to do and how they choose to do it, and where they succeed or fail. Our Dredgewater. Matter of fact, that session you and I had, the game you ran for me, and I think our second or third test of this, Dredgewater got destroyed by a flood. Or was it my session? Did I run that? Yeah, I ran that session that it was destroyed by a flood, right?
Oh, and I had to either choose to let go of the girl or let go of the sword.
And literally, by the end of that session, there is no Dredgewater. It has been wiped out by a catastrophic flood, river dredge, catastrophic flood, and you're already dislocated from your hometown, and you're already 30 miles away at whatever city that was with the princess. The little girl, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so if we were running a campaign, anybody who comes into the game, Dredgewater is just a mud hole. There is no Dredgewater, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
in our first session, if this was a campaign, Dredgewater's gone already.
Yeah, it's just like a legacy game in a way. You know what I mean? As far as like the map changes,
right,
and has been added to as you explore it. Like you said, you know, it's from Dragon Slayer where you go out, and you find these places. Everything needs to be a little bit of a mystery and have that air of like, oh, we just discovered this town.
Because you mentioned it again today, and it's one of the reasons I love this era, because I'm a huge Rome. I love Rome and the history of Rome, especially as it encroached as far as it could. They built the Hadrian's Wall, and then they regressed and left. And you mentioned it in your video today. It's one of the things I love about this era. It's the Dark Ages, man. There's stuff people have forgotten. There's old roads. There's old Roman ruins. There can be old Roman, you know. I mean, really, we can do almost anything we want, as you said today. You reminded today whether they play Vikings or not. And that's the other thing that was hard for you the other night, because choosing Vikings instantly dislocates us. Right? We're on a boat.
Yes.
We aren't grounded in who we can talk to or who we know. So my Viking had 1 prestige. If I wasn't free to use that prestige on the ship, which I didn't feel I was free to do, when was I going to be able to use that prestige in our first raid? Because, Vikings didn't show up and ring the doorbell and say, we're going to have a chat. This isn't the mob coming to wring protection money out of the laundromat owner, right? This is Vikings taking whatever the fuck they want, pardon my French.
Yeah. I knew I was opening a can of worms, because not only were we testing the D12 and testing it in a smaller bound 12 system, I knew that I was going into a different area, because it always kind of got on me. Like Vikings, well, at least they can carry it and we can expand via them. Yep. But they're mainly, what they provide isn't as like the nobility, and you don't have this kind of structured thing. It's all tribal. Yeah, like the Vikings were. There wasn't no towns or cities. It didn't work that way. But it's at least a springboard to where we can go to other areas if we want to.
They had, they had districts basically with, overriding chieftains. They were districts, and they all had kind of their own. The Viking. I've read 2 books on Viking culture and history, and I just haven't looked at them in years. But it's remarkable. Yeah. They were far more sophisticated than the barbarians from the north. They were pagan, and they had their own culture, but when they went raiding, they basically did whatever the hell they had to do, right?
Yeah, they would do it in the off season.
But what's cool, I mean, there's a great example. If in session 2 that you run, again, I've survived. I'm going to have to heal up. Moldov survived, and of course, Ripa is now the leader of our 30-man unit, whatever. I don't know how many people we lost in the fight. So we would have to circle the wagons. Dredgewater, Washburn's dead. They've all ran away. The peasants would be screaming and hiding in their hovels while we're, doing what we do. That session starts with us standing in the middle of Dredgewater, with a dead lord, looking at the palisade of Dredgetown, right? We still have to siege Dredgetown. Just because Dredgewater's dead, they're going to bolt that sucker up, because there's Lady Washburn and her children.
Exactly.
So we have this. Where do we go? Do we negotiate? Do we try to take the castle? Oh, not the castle, the palisade. Once we're set there, right, and we've established a new hierarchy. So the great thing about the episode is it started where we had no authority, no hierarchy. Already, all 3 of us have more hierarchy, more authority than we had when the session started. So, right?
Yeah.
Because we were subordinate guys on our first or second Viking. Now, one of the youngest guys on only his second Viking is really taking control of the Viking. I mean, of the Raider.
Yeah, and he gets more prestige for that. Yeah. He can add it to him.
Well,
makes him a little bit more
his point in prestige.
Renown.
He's got more repute, but he's got to put his point in prestige.
Right. Yeah, excuse me. Repute. He can add it to.
I mean, think about this. The other 30 of the Vikings are all minions, right? So that means with my 1 prestige and his 1 prestige, right? I mean, we're going to be leading these men, so to speak, and we're going to, so already we're elevated, even though I'm only 16 years old. Again, it's that old battlefield promotion thing. It doesn't matter how old or how experienced.
Exactly.
Leadership shows up, dude.
Immediately respecting whenever you're in the battle, and everybody has to realize that prestige is because of that. Prestige is a vehicle for you to be able to communicate with others and have more respects amongst the nobility or houses,
or even among our little group. Yeah.
Among your peers or whatever like that. But I mean, he could take it. Jordan could take his point and put it in body, and it would be like, you should have seen him storm through, and the way he did this, and all the stories about that would be structured around his magnificence of his physical aspects, or his mind. Look how cunning he is, and when he did this, so it kind of feeds into the narrative, which is what we try to do with all of our attributes and everything, is to feed narrative. How does this affect the story, the renown of a person, what they are? How do they use their attributes to couch themselves in the story and position themselves? Because you gotta position yourself in the narrative, the fiction, in a way that you're gonna approach your, like I said earlier, if you got a mind, you need to be more cunning and use your guile in the narrative to get the upper leg on the situation, and gain the advantage.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't go fist to cuffs. You know what I mean?
No.
If it's not,
and that's the whole point. It exists. It was a violent, dangerous, deadly time, but you're free to play a character almost any way you can. You can
be a trickster, man.
You can try to navigate your way through the world, and because there is no. As I said before, you can pretty much look at Dungeons and Dragons, for instance. Again, I hate that you keep going to this, but it's the easiest way to look at tier-based gaming, hierarchy gaming. Yeah. What levels up when you level up? Well, you get more tools, and you get more hit points, and you get more. All that stuff just equates to you basically being a greater combatant for the most part. I mean, you can get more spells, but almost every spell. One of the things I kind of didn't like so much about the spells that existed in Pathfinder, they're all combat spells. Like everything's just a combat spell, it seems to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are more, but I really haven't played it in years now, a couple of years. But it's just this sense that everything is scaling up for. And that's not to say guys play campaigns like that. Trust me, they don't have to, right?
Well, look at the witch, the witch that you came up against. What if that was a character, so to say? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And she could play on people's fears and people's.
Oh yeah. However, that's what I'm saying. If whatever character you see,
attack their mind. Yeah. That's what you do.
It's another.
That's how
one.
she.
Yeah,
that's how she could do if you were playing a character like that. That's how you would affect the world. So you could. I don't care how beefy the guy is. If he has fears and whatever she's casting a hex on him, then he's going to have to respond in kind.
I mean, it's a great example. Justin could have chose to make a Viking that's a little crazy. Put all of his points in mind or spirit, and he could have not been so much a warrior, but as a Viking that has to go raiding. And he turns out he's a little nuts, and he's more of a druid, kind of pagan, mystical, wizard.
Yeah,
right.
Doing concoctions and
history. If people say, those guys weren't with the Viking raids. Well, again, it's a pseudo historical. But he could have.
You're only limited by your own creative imagination, and as far as character development and what you want to play. Mm-hmm. And you're 100% right on that. He could do whatever he wants to, whatever he can imagine, and the game is flexible enough to allow that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because, like Jorian said, that start describing his character. There's this calm piece about him that kind of an uneasy thing with his comrades that he kind of relishes. That's when he comes alive whenever he's going in berserk mode, and then he's just calm as all get out. Afterwards, and you're like, geez, I'm dealing with a nutcase here, a loose cannon. What I mean?
It would be unsettling that such a mild-mannered guy can be such a, right? Because he's basically describing that he's just a pretty nice, mild-mannered guy. But on the battlefield turns into a bloodthirsty, cold-blooded killing machine, right?
Yeah, so you could, when that description informed the narrative and informed how I had the responses that he got from other characters, and how things change for him, and even me bringing up mine. Is he going to be able to, retain lucidity and a cognitive awareness of things as he's going berserk? So that's why I had him roll that. If he wouldn't have described his character that way. But see, the game's so flexible, it allows for a character. And Jory didn't want to say, hey, I'm impenetrable. I'm not, you can't touch me. I'm min-maxed out. He said, look, this guy's a little crazy that I'm playing, and he has this thing. So that to me, I love playing characters where they have natural hindrances. You have to get over things, and you have to battle your own demons, and you have to get everything. I love being behind the 8 ball and trying to work my way out, puzzle my way out of the situation.
Exactly.
And
we have the freedom, again, through our system to affect your attributes, not just your health. Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So guys can get the plague and their body drops. They can get diseased and their mind goes. They can be affected by, words of power. They can have.
Yeah, you can lose your prestige. Or things can fluctuate back and forth according to your life. And we touched on the different things like that with age, maybe lessening the body after 30, or even Jorian, like he said. And I'm glad you put a pause on me because I already had full plate whenever he suggested maybe starting off Now he suggested this. We're asking a person to come in and play and conceptualize what they want to play. And he's like, can I take a negative in one of my attributes to boost something up? Like, he's maybe if you
Yeah,
wanted
and
to
I
play
added that. By the way, I
blind
added that to the rules. With your presenters okay, you can start an attribute at -1, but you don't get that point to add to something else.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you would only
To me,
choose a
that's
-1 because you believe your character has a flaw, not so you can get up to 5 prestige out of the gate or something. Right?
exactly okay. That's great. That's great. But
So
I do think
yeah, I mean, you could choose to have a -1 mind that your character's a little, maybe he's got some,
mental affliction or something or
right. But you don't get to
depression
take
or
that
anything.
point now and give him So,
Yeah.
but I do put it in the rule. I did put it in the rules today that, of course, you are free to take a -1 in any attribute to start as a drawback, but you're going to have to consult your presenter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you don't get a
enriches the
bonus
character.
for it.
Oh yeah,
So
it's not an offset.
the real role players will try it. The gamers that want to min-max, they ain't gonna touch it.
But see, I will do this even in an OSR game, and it's not allowed. I mean, it's like I was playing, with Ivan and the guys, and Jose made a remark because I said that this one guy conceptualized at the start of I think it was a Ubiquity game, right? And he in his mind see that he was a doctor. He would get his wife, whatever the condition is, where she gets bruising up underneath there, and she died from internal hemorrhaging, right? But in his mind, he still thinks she's alive. So what he's doing is he's trying to research this to save her still, right? So he tests his body. He will get in fights just to get bruised up, just to get whatever. But he's a little bit off. You know what I mean? And Jose's like, I started in the bottom of the ship in a hole where I was doing boxing match. In fact, I would get them started. I was more like a promoter to be able to work because of the medical doctor too, but be able to work on these people. You know what I mean? To see this. And he's like, you don't start with flaws. You start purposely hindering yourself. And I'm like, I love that because it's more of a rich character. I mean, even, anyway, you could go off. I love having the ability to play who I want to be because to me, it's ultimately not about starting as a grunt and trying to work up the way to just be self-glorification. I want to know these people that are living there in this time, what they had to endure, whatever their special circumstances were, what their story is as you play through it. That to me, so if I can have this land of Ungland where it's peopled with all these interesting, unique personalities is a lot more valuable to me personally than just taking somebody from level 1 and running them all the way. Not that somebody else may enjoy that.
Oh, and even in our game, I'll enjoy it, right? I mean, in campaign, as you get points, you get. But the key is the challenges should still always be available for you to be your character with your bonuses or your drawbacks, whatever you are, and you're still going to be faced with how you're going to role play authentically that character through every situation.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's, I don't mean that you can't play a character through because it's still their story in the world, and that there's nothing taken from that who wants to play somebody.
Well, it's like my character almost died. He had to crawl off into the mud and hide. He's down to 2 hit points or whatever. Even if nobody saw it and nobody really knows what, how I avoided death, right? Because nobody would really know it. The other Vikings were fighting, etc. They will have no idea that I basically faked my death. My character's got to live with the fact, right? That's an actual that's an internal problem for my character now.
Yeah, and it has to be realized, and it has to be how do you
basically here I am, on this manly raid. Right, and I ultimately faked my death to crawl away.
And Lord knows he was
some psychological scarring from that, right? Not only that, but I got my ass kicked on top of everything else.
But on top of that, you were already had issues because of being called half man,
right?
Or you know what I mean? That you were already.
If I'm going to authentically play this character, those things matter. Instead of just healing up and I'm back to 100%, my character's going to, at some level, be carrying around. At some level, does this make me more dangerous because I want to prove myself? Does it make me more of a coward? Where am I headed? right?
That's what I meant. That's interesting to me, to see what this character, what demons he battles, what he has to go through, he or she has to go through in their own lives, and to face
what
it.
kind of dastardly shit would he become? Like the king in the Last Kingdom, the guy who thinks he should be king with Alfred's, the first couple of seasons, that little shitty little drunkard. The king. He was the rightful prince.
He was over with a whore hopper, and then he was drinking all the time.
Yeah, and he was constantly backstabbing, and he was always, my character could well become this. Obviously, I want to survive, and I'm saying when I'm in character, I'm thinking, this is what he's thinking. I got to survive this. I'll fake my death. I'll just pretend to die. But when I'm in character, I'm not quite certain how I'm going to navigate through this world and rectify, right, some of those things. So I don't know yet. I mean, I'm not contriving it. When I get into character and as things arise, I'll make decisions in character. I don't know where this guy's going.
Yeah, and I follow where you lead and where the seeds drop. If I'm presenting, that's the beauty of it, because a lot of stuff, man, I'm telling you, the best stuff can happen spontaneously. Right. It's not me steering or quantum ogering or directing you down this course. No, but you're supposed to be over here to do some diplomacy. It says so in chapter 3. Yeah. I'm not doing it. You go where you want, and you are fully allowed to research and delve into your character and say, what would he be motivated to do? Right. You can't really do that. This character you're describing here, would he be propelled to go have some kind of a, follow a module basis where he's supposed to go do something that that character wouldn't be inclined to do? Maybe through self-doubt. Right. See, it's not really in-depth exploration of these characters that we make whenever you just following the path. You're more just like an avatar for yourself, and you just running around doing what you got to do. But to really explore a character in a setting and to say, what has this character faced in game and even before in the character build that makes him who he is, and it drives how you react to things.
Well, and everything we encounter, right? So, for instance, those random seeds, whether they actually encounter a random seed, it's it can be something that happens in a slightly distant region, and the players just navigate away from it. So they roll another random seed, and they navigate to it. Well, for instance, the bog hag, my character already was mentally afflicted by her curses and her stuff, right? Yeah. He had to back away and get out of that, right? And so you can just see this has been, and then he was haunted by some of that in his head as we rode away, right? Still those curses, as you described. As I'm also going, I can't believe this. What's going on? Now I was very quickly almost killed, right? So, again, this as my character encounters, and we can't control the dice. That's the other beautiful thing. I may narrate that I'm going to fight these two guys, but I can't control whether I'm going to win it or not. I can't control how I'm going to win it, right? So I don't know if someone's going to come to my rescue. I don't know if, you just don't know what's going to happen. So, but all of these experiences are going to affect the personality of this 16-year-old kid on his first excursion. Who's he going to become? And I always look forward to playing them in character to see who they become. Like Jurgen. Who did Jurgen become in Lamentation of the Flame Princess? In the game, I was so in character, I told Ivan at one point, every time I tried to do something with my cleric abilities, I fell. I told there was something we encountered, some creature, something. I told Ivan, I tear off my holy symbol and I throw it into the mud. I forsake my clerical class. And I said, so if you'll allow it, I'm going to fight her now. So Jurgen went from a cleric to a fighter some point in those campaigns. Yeah. Because he lost all faith in his god, right? And so, Jurgen started a cleric and became a fighter who was so utterly despondent about God. And then that was Lamentation of the Flame Princess, right?
Well, the hell is get it out live and let you do that. You know what I mean? It could have been stickler.
You role play a character, right? Yeah. Now, and again, I wasn't becoming more powerful by throwing away my clerical abilities. I was becoming technically a first level fighter. So, but the point I'm saying is, regardless of the game engine and how Lamentations, you should be able to play a character pretty much that doesn't break the system. Well, our game, it's designed so you can't break the system.
Well, and I believe personally it enhances
with 3 mind who's learning magic Boom! Right out of the gate, you can be basically a wizard, right? Right out of the gate, you can be a priest. Right out of the gate, you can be a nobleman. Right out of the gate, you can be an outlaw.
Yeah.
And other games let you do that too. But my point is, you can put those points in an attribute that really weights you pretty significantly, especially prestige.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you're going to need to
exactly.
there are going to be situations where there are those who don't care about your prestige, like the sea peoples. They don't give a rat's ass that you're a nobleman in Dredgewater when they show up.
Oh yeah,
They're going to
you
kill
better
you,
run from
or they're going to
one
ransom
place
you.
to another.
Right. And remember,
You
some of
better.
our critical hits, like the sea peoples the other day, right?
Yeah.
The critical hits. So on critical hit 1, it's 2 points of damage. And on our sea peoples, on the critical hit, a second critical failure, it's 2 points of damage, or you could sunder a sword or a weapon or something. But on a second critical failure, they take you hostage. That's it, no questions. So you would have to then narrate how they capture me, apprehend me, and hold me for ransom or take me under arrest, right? Especially the sea peoples. So not us. The other night, not us, but like Washburn had Washburn been critically failed, or had my character been a Dredgewater civilian and been critically failed against a Viking, they would have taken me for ransom or as a slave. So second critical, you narrate how you can't beat them. They take you under control, right? On the second critical failure.
Well, that's a lot. Like going back to D12 and the narration one-on-one with Jorian and that other one, as far as rolling it, to keep it from going to like that. We do need to do some test rolls.
So Jory could have said, right, I don't want to kill Dredgewater, right, Washburn. I'm going to take his ass for ransom.
If he would have been aware, but he wasn't.
No. But I'm just saying he could have. In our game, you can elect, instead of killing him, I'm taking him hostage. I'm taking him for ransom.
He effectively did that with Tugger when he opted to knee him instead of doing the killing blow.
Right.
So that's how he said it, more sustained. Just a temporary damage.
Right.
Knocked him back. So he could have.
You have total control over that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he did that through narrative, so that was at least one thing we go, okay, I get what you're saying. He fell back, but you're right. There needs to be, especially it's important in single role system. When we look at that, to keep a number, to keep a tabulate, and that number keys you off of what happens, back and forth. I am interested to do some test rolls with some higher difficulties. And Jorian, he had stacked his body and his weapons to where it was pretty much all but assured that he was going to roll at least 75% of the time hits. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, he was, even if he rolled, unless he rolled a 1, which is critical failure no matter what your modifiers, if he rolls a 2 with his +4, he was going to get 6 minimum.
Yeah. He was. I mean, there was only probably about 3 faces.
I changed all the math today. I went through and fixed all the D12 math. But out of curiosity, real quick, I'll just quickly pull it up here. And let's just get a quick look. I'm showing off our book here. But I got everything done today. But let's just go down here. Matter of fact, in our current bestiary, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 creatures in our current bestiary that he would hit if he rolled a 2.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. He is a Viking warrior who wanted to build a warrior. I mean, that's the other thing. You don't want to tell somebody that they aren't going to be able to be competent at first. That's the other thing. You can be competent at first level, but you're gonna want to put those points in body, mind, spirit, whatever it is you want to be really competent at. Or you can be like I was. I had 3 attributes with some bonus in them. So
it could have been just the other way where he was surrounded by 2.
Like Brian did. Brian did in our other big test play. Brian made he
was magnificent as a lord. I sit there and I was really kind of entranced by him. I think that whole time, brilliant. Even though the game is meant to be where you pass it back and forth, but just as one co-creator, I'm sitting there going like, he's really freaking nailing this down. I was
Yeah,
really happy.
he made total sense of it. I think he made himself like a 19 or 20-year-old lord with a little brother.
He wasn't somebody who was focused
with
toward
a little brother. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he went in there and he owned the stage. He did what he had to do, and you're going like, this is somebody who knows how to run that position and do it effectively.
Right.
You know,
and,
so
I
still remember you slicing the apple and giving it to him and I was like, damn, he's got this down pat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As far as when he was approaching you, I love that dialogue back and forth. I got lost in
and
it.
I was thinking about this just to get off the subject. Think about this.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this between generations. I mean, we don't have any clue. You know, back in 900, you know, it's a king could be 18 years old, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, think about this. What were you doing at 24 years old, dude? You weren't commanding no fucking country, and you weren't right. So this is what's funny. I was thinking about it. My father at 16 commanded a platoon of men. I thought, dude, when I was 16, you know, I was still getting my driver's license, dude. Totally different planet between my father's. What my father was doing at 16 and what the hell I was doing at 16.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, Jesus, man, I can't imagine it. I was not ready to command men at 16 years old, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing.
So think about it. So when Brian says, "Oh I'm a 19-year-old lord who's inherited this small fiefdom," you know, and it's like, well, that's exactly right. They were adults making grown ass decisions at 18 years old, 19 years old. It was pretty cool.
I know. I love it.
So there's a naivete to him being young, but yet, again, it's that kind of mythology. It's that kind of erroneous mythology that
that
how
we
you were born
misconceptualized. Yeah.
Well, it's erroneous because, you know, we say, oh, you know, it's all about bloodlines. You know, how this is how class started, right? What's your bloodline? And your bloodline just you are the rightful heir to the crown because it's in your blood. It's assumed that a 14-year-old Elizabeth could be queen, right? Because it's in her blood.
Yeah.
Which I think we all know is nonsense, but maybe not, right? Maybe there is some genes there, man. No, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's why Brian's character was it felt so authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
Because he's a 19-year-old lord who's got a little brother to worry about. At the same time, he's got a freaking minor fiefdom to deal with. Yeah. And that was a starting character. Name another game where you get to start as a basically a minor lord of your own little.
Yeah, see, it leaves me so interested to either play from all the way from the bottom of society to the top. And
I love the responsibility. As I told Brian, outstanding, but you have responsibilities. So he goes into the game where when they come running to him and say, Lord, bandits have burned my farmhouse to the ground. He has a responsibility to those to those tenants. He's got to do something for them. So
that's what I mean. The more people you have,
I can roll random seeds that you're constantly putting out fires on this minor fiefdom, you know. And that's part of why I put you in 2161. I purposely made you a police officer with no real overhead.
Also, it explains why
you needed to have responsibilities, and that that gives your character motivation to do something other than just wander around.
Yeah, it goes to it too when you get these random stuff. Like you could say fire. What does this mean for one character as opposed to the other?
Right.
That's why it is like we write the random seeds like that. In context, in this situation, what does it mean? Does it mean that I'm out hunting and I come into a fire? Does it mean that on Brian's fiefdom that houses are on fire? And you know what I mean? It depends. Yeah. So really, it can inject itself into the story. What seems more viable and plausible at the moment that you put in there, and then that all of a sudden they have to deal with.
Well, when a random seed just says fire, that's purposely vague, so the presenter knows he has to put fire of some kind, some way in front of the players. I can literally say to Brian, your crops are burning. Somebody has set alight your crops. Now we got a mystery. Brian's got to first put this fire out, save what crops he's got. And then he's got to figure out how the hell does fire start, right? So now you got the whole night, Brian's trying to figure out who the hell set my crops afire, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's your 3-hour session as you're hunting down why your crops were lit on fire, right?
But it's beautiful to be so flexible like that, and like I said, the attributes inform any kind of profession. I want to make sure that the game is not, and I know it's a dangerous time, but there's plenty of flexibility to play different types, like Brian. And life itself, I've said, will balance things out.
Yeah.
When you have more responsibility under you, if you're a noble, you have lots of prestige, then you got to be accountable. Your accountability is
Look
up
what
there.
happened to Eric. Eric
Yeah.
in that session, he said, I want to be a blacksmith. And what did I do? I put his ass to work, right? I had the guys come to him to repair his armor and the wagon. So Eric was a blacksmith, right? Now these guys came to him and said, do this for me, do that for me. Brian came to Eric and said, I need you to fix my father's sword, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the best examples, and I love this example, it's one of the best memories. Me and Todd and David were playing. You was running us through that game, and I was playing more like the King's console. And David was over the military aspect of it, and Todd was over the clergy. Mm-hmm. And he sent three of us, and we had, we pulled some people with us to go down there and talk to the Vikings that had landed and encamped to find out what was going on. Well, right at that start of that session, there was something that I found in the paperwork that was showing a deed or somewhat to some land that was rightfully the king's that he was unaware of. And then I slipped it in my pocket when he came in and didn't say a thing to him.
Yeah, I
even at that moment,
it was brilliant because, this is my point about playing. This is my point about player agency, right? You did with it what I didn't think you would do. And then I went, shit, what is Dell going to do with this codicil of that I've given him, right?
Yeah, and that whole time, though, I had in my mind, I said, David and Todd, I remember when we was in there talking to the Viking, I said, Todd, I was thinking, will you please shut your mouth? But he was playing his character, right?
Yeah, he was.
Everybody was crucified going in there. He's like, you need to go ahead and turn over to Christianity.
Perfect.
And he's like, oh my God, I thought we had it in the hand, because what I was trying to do was get those Vikings to attack the people that had settled on that land that I was going to then will over to myself and take control of. So I was having people doing my dirty work. Yeah. And see, that's where I didn't have to go in there and beat that Viking down. Yeah. I just had to, I had to go in there and get him to work for me.
Well,
so my prestige was going to sway that from my end.
You can negotiate, right? And if there's something in it for the Viking, right?
Yeah.
Which there was. I think it was you or David. Somebody said, Don't you want to bring your children up here? Don't you want your kids to be Englanders, basically? Right?
Yeah,
I think it was David that won him over in the sense that because he wanted to settle there. That's why he took the village.
No, well, I was telling him that we would pay. Basically, he didn't have to pay. In other words, paying him the Donegal to go for him to go over there. And I said, this will leave you to go attack them, right? Because I knew that the other guy, the bastard, had taken the land. So I was like, they can go over there and do this. Right. And look, we will farm the land for you and then turn over a certain amount of money, and then you can go get them to do the same thing, right? Yeah. Eliminate them. I'm like, while they're killing each other, then we can go ahead and attack them. Yeah. I'll talk to David later. But Todd, David, I didn't tell them a word of that. Because I had my sleeves, but they didn't know what their paperwork was about or anything. Their characters
they didn't even know you had it.
I know, but it was beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful. I said, if I could work this,
point. You had something your character was hoping to achieve. You had ambition.
Oh yeah.
You had ambition.
I was going to start my own little fiefdom. You know what I mean? Over to when the Vikings took him out, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. But see, there's an example. This is what I was talking about. Why it's so important that we set the game up. Just because we use naive narrator and we want the presenter to be in a naive seat, and I talk about this. I made more than one video trying to express it because I'm not certain I do. We don't mean that you shouldn't know. You shouldn't set up the players in an initial start setup. We're not saying you shouldn't understand the world, know the world. But then you drop the dice and give the players their head, and then you hold on. It's kind of like being on a bareback Mustang. You hold the fuck on for dear life as players go, man. Right?
We're saying we shouldn't tell them by chapter 3 you'll be doing diplomacy. That's what we're not doing. No. We're not saying, we're not railroading you. We're not putting up bumpers or tracks. We're not focusing our attention on on something that we've pre-planned for you,
Right.
a course of action that you will take, right?
Right.
Because what we're going to do is let you play IC in
Mhm.
character and follow your character's normal
Mm-hmm.
pattern or thought, or give the liberty for the player to delve into there and say, what
Right.
are their interests? Where are they going to go? See, that allowed me to do what I wanted to do with my
Sure,
characters
sure.
and be able to do. And so you let characters do that, and then you take all your energy and focus and fill out the world before them as they go
Yep.
with these random seeds. And
Yep.
this is what's
And
happening
it's
around
not
you.
writer room gaming. You know, we don't sit around and all come up with the best example of the best possible narrative outcome. It's not writer room gaming. It is you play a character, you encounter variables. Sometimes you're going to engage in them. Sometimes you're going to ignore them. Sometimes they're not relevant to you because you're somewhere else doing something else. You know, and you should be constantly faced with some dilemmas, like the dilemma in the flood. You had to lose something to hold on to the girl. You could have let the girl drown, who you weren't certain was a real princess, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the other thing. It's like you weren't even certain she was a legitimate princess.
Yeah.
But you didn't, you did the right thing. You didn't let her drown, right? But you lost your sword.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Anyway.
So you have player agency, but sometimes you got to make a tough choice.
Well, yeah. I mean, you that's what you play for. You know what I mean? To get these situations where you have
if there's no risk reward, it's not gaming. If there's got to be some challenge and some risk reward. So
you got to play the integrity of the character.
Player agency should not mean no risk reward. Should not mean guaranteed victory. Should not mean you get to tell your story unencumbered or unhindered. No. I still believe players want a game. They still want to know they've succeeded because there was a challenge.
Yeah, they have to be challenged.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't believe players are looking to just get whatever the hell they want. You know, I do. I mean, I think players like to have the superhero complex. They like to feel like they're a badass, right? Certain games inspire that, right?
Well, I mean, if you're playing like a video game like Batman or something like that, maybe so. But if there's a lot of people that like them Souls-like games. Speaking of video games, where there is a challenge, where there's right. You want to feel accomplishment when you can do that. What I'm saying is, in this game and in certain old OSR games, you can feel accomplished tactically or whatever when you're playing, but you feel accomplished whenever whenever in this game especially gives you the liberty to follow this character's truth wherever it leads.
Yep.
So you're getting to play this character authentically without restrictions to say, well, I'm sorry you're this and that, but you're on this module here that's going to take you on an area you wouldn't normally go to.
I mean, I think like in the think about this too. We have been running Naive Narrator since your 50th birthday. I have been.
Yeah.
And then we've been developing Dark Age of Man. So how many sessions of straight Naive Narrator with random seeds have we done with multiple systems, right? But the first time I ever did it was Modern Age.
Modern Age.
And it worked with Modern Age. And then I said, well, let's make it a more comfortable system. We know a little better. So we went to the Wild West D&D game. It was basically Dungeons and Dragons, D20.
And IWD and AI.
Right. And that was when you dynamite. That's when you blew yourself up with dynamite. Then we went to the D6.
Love that system, man.
Yeah. And then we went to the AIA D6. And that was it. That was when I said, dude, this is it. It's the perfect, simple system to do exactly what we're
doesn't inhibit our narrative flow.
But you had to roll dice for every challenge. So it was still legitimate. You were rolling dice for combat. You were rolling dice for challenge. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. What it didn't have were obviously there are no rules in it for random seeds and it didn't have prestige for this idea of how a character. And this is one of the things I was thinking about. I'm not really interested in level up gaming. I've always said before, even like Holmes D&D is perfect because it stays in level 1, 2, and 3. I'm not interested in watching guys blowed up. I'm interested in watching them. I'm interested in seeing characters go to another level of challenge, like negotiating treaties when there's a major war. Or I want to see players in those realms. Yeah. Right. So our game is not a level-based game. You get repute. You get to add a couple of points to your attributes. You max out at 10 repute. That's it. You start at 3 at repute. You max out at 10. But you could be negotiating and doing things again out of the gate as an entry-level character. You could be a noble with a 3 prestige. Yeah. And you're going to already be dealing with certain things. right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's right. And however you want to approach it, you just got to realize
Now you got to have
your build
GMs
is.
who understand that if this is the other, I guess, the real fear I've had with the game. If you don't define everything, you get a GM who's been playing nothing but combat focused games for years, right? Many of them don't. Many of them have played other stuff like PBTA, and they've played other great games that aren't all combat driven, like Call of Cthulhu's not a combat game. Matter of fact, you want to stay the hell out of combat. So there are plenty of experienced, advanced GMs who can handle sophisticated players with a sophisticated challenge, not just the throw a bigger monster at the badder player, right? So one of the things that worried me was, what do you do with an entry-level character that's a nobleman? Where the player has to kind of know the nobleman's role in society and has to know kind of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And then the GM's got to know kind of how to challenge a nobleman.
Yeah, I know that's one fear I had. That's why I mentioned after you said the primer, I said maybe that would be, something to add to where it could kind of lay at least a little bit of a knowledgeable groundwork. For people.
I mean, even the Viking thing, we were on a Viking raid, so all you had to do was challenge us with combat, really. At least off the boat. I mean, off the boat, right? Once we're off the boat and we're on
it's not too sophisticated.
I mean, it would have got. I mean, it's like anything. Once we got on the ground and we started raiding, and we'd have to worry about securing our camps or securing these locations, and then things start getting dicey as there's other stuff that comes up, right?
Yeah, it does, and you can handle a host of different things, like with a witch, and then you may have a madness going around a camp, or you could have them could get some kind of sickness that's passing around. And then you got people, and you got to have one of their priests countering it, or what have you. So there can be things happening to this, but you're right, it is a more combat focused
and that's
group,
why
and that was what I was worried about.
It's going to be so important that presenters make their own random seeds for their own sessions, because the minute they can start with one of our sample adventures, but once those characters take off and that sample adventure's over and they've established themselves in Dredgewater, session number 2, you're going to want those seeds to be relevant to your characters in your campaign and relevant to what's left in Dredgewater, or relevant if they left Dredgewater and headed north for some reason. Those random seeds every session need to be relevant in context.
Yeah, I know. What's the beautiful thing about it? The more I get more enriched character descriptions and development when I hear it, and it endears me to these characters, and I want to find out their stories. Yours, Justin's. What are these things that these challenges they're facing together and independently going to lead these characters? I get to see y'all embody them and bring them to life.
See, that's the perfect example. So let's say next Tuesday night we were playing, and we're going to play these same characters again, and everybody knows that we've basically won this battle in Dredgewater. He's killed Washburn. Ripa's taken over. He's basically our leader now. You would want to sit down before that session and write random seeds relevant to our Viking tribe. Yeah.
Right? To what drives you?
So you
might
have
be more acutely aware of.
The third, 3 or 18 might be something like flood or dragon, something catastrophic, but it could be like 17 could be somebody got away from Dredgewater and got help, went over to the next kingdom, and we've just heard, we heard rumor that lord is sending a fucking army, right?
Every session is going to feed into the next random seeds,
right? Because
you have to incorporate what happened.
Can be written solely for our Viking camp. I mean, you literally could, almost like a soap opera, make those seeds relevant to intrigue inside our Viking camp, right?
Yeah, because they're what's coming to bear on you at some point, or what is more likely to bear on you or to affect you,
right?
And so they could crop up. It's what you're doing is planting seeds. They're cropping up around you. Yep. What will so there's going to be a certain amount of random activity, seeds that crop up, and it's more directional, specific to what has previously happened. And because you're building this web of intrigue as you go.
Well, like the Conan, I made 3 random seed charts for Conan, and then I made random seeds for the river and random seeds for land. But I made 3. I made a random seed chart for your character. I made a random seed chart for Todd's character, and a random seed chart when I did Matt Conan one-off. So stuff could come up on your chart that pertained to your character's background or your character's knowledge. Matter of fact, I think we came to something your character knew. There was one that rolled up, came up, and your character immediately recognized. I can't remember now that Conan game, but I actually made random seeds based on your characters.
Yeah.
Right? Before that session started.
Yeah.
I didn't have to prepare an adventure. I prepared stuff that should be relevant to your character. And then, of course, I had one for the river and one for the forest and whatever, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. And then you can have something based on the territory where you're located.
Which is,
so you can have.
There's guys listening to this and say, well, that's just Wandering Monsters. Kind of. But random seeds are generally an event, a thing that you have to deal with, not just a monster, right?
Oh yeah, that's what it goes back to what I was saying about target difficulties about as far as adjusting that, and you know, we have them listed with the creatures, but also, you know, with difficulties that you may face in life. It could be anything, you know what I mean, from whatever's happening in the world that is triggered off,
right,
or just something you want to accomplish, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's got legs on it. We need to look at the D12 and do that. I mean, as far as turning it into a you know, like a I've never been a fan of turn-based.
No, and I don't mean it turn-based. I mean, the presenter gets an opportunity to then narrate what the bad guys are doing to them, right? So Ripa would say, okay, I'm striding into him and I'm gonna cut him down. He rolls a 12 and you describe it, and then you say, yeah, he shakes it off, stands up and comes at you, and he's gonna try to knock your shield free from your arm and roll the dice.
I get what you're saying.
Roll the dice, and then he rolls the dice and rolls a 2, and you say, you failed defending yourself. So he has literally knocked that shield, you know, out of your hands, right?
To tell you the truth, Jason, I think that's the first original concept of it.
Because what was happening is he would win, and then you would just say, well, tell me now what you do. Oh, I attack him again. Okay.
It wasn't
okay,
back and forth.
Tell me what you do. Well, I attack him again. There was no sense that you could tactically affect Ripa. You weren't taking your moment to say, wait, but now he's gonna try to do this. So we need to really empower the presenter, right, to activate events or activate mode. If not, Tugga literally was the doll. He was a punching bag. He just got Tugga did nothing.
No, you're right. You're right. Now so, it isn't changing. It isn't changing.
So it wasn't wrong that he wasted him. It just felt weird because Tugga didn't do anything.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, that was my fault, because what you're saying here is it shouldn't be in the original rules. It was the first original concept of it, because you would say, because the dice deciding what is exactly happening. Right. Because when these two forces collide, like the immovable, you know,
because when is an NPC knight going to be able to disarm you or take you ransom, or if you don't speak up for him?
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. See, that was originally how it was supposed to be. I fell out of
that's our description.
The game.
This comic book panel behind me, that's describing how that's an ebb and flow. The player says what he wants, roll the die. The presenter says what he wants, rolls the die. But the player rolls all the dice.
Yeah, and then you find out what happens there. That's what I mean. Those comic panels are to illustrate how the battle flows. That was me dropping the ball on that.
I don't know if you dropped the ball. I think it just dawned on us that, you know, we want to give player agency to narrate the fight and what the damage is, etc. But then it's like I think I did the same thing against Eric in the battlefield in that game. We had a brilliant session, but then we got to the big fight, and it was like every time Eric won the die roll, it was like, well, doesn't this guy get to defend himself? Doesn't this guy get to do something? And I did this. I made the same mistake then, because we're trying to give player agency. We forgot that we still have to take actions for the dragon. You know, the dragon doesn't just fly around waiting to be killed.
Yeah, in general, in my mind, what the deal was, that roll will show you who has the upper hand on the roll. Like if Jory would have rolled, and no matter what Jory has intended, if he misses, then I say.
But I think that's what's wrong with it. But I think honestly, that's what's wrong with the combat. The combat, Jory should get to say what he wants to do, and then rolls the dice to see if he succeeds or fails. Then we get to act on behalf of them, and then Jory still has to roll to see, right? It's just he gets to
Yeah.
activate a narration and see the results, and then we should get to activate a motivation of Tugga, and then he rolls to see what the results are. He could
Yeah.
have still cut Tugga down in 2 or 3 swings, because when I say to him, Tugga tries to get that shield and he rolls a 12, he just critically. So when he goes for your shield, I say, well, narrate how you break his arm, and then he says, oh, he tries to take my shield. I bash him, and then I use my axe to twist his shoulder out of joint.
No, you're right on it, because what I did wrong was I fell into a bad habit of trying to summarize and do that way, because you can look back, like I said, in the original comic panels, it has that hot potato aspect of, okay, this is what's happening, but the die roll will tell you what exactly is going on. So you still have that, but like you're saying, it defaulted more into the player, and then just leaving it in the player's hand to say either way, and then.
Well, it became, like we wanted this fighting. We wanted our games combat to feel like comic book panels, right? Batman says something, and then it's pow, right? And then, of course, it cuts to, the Joker, pulling some spray out and squirting it in Batman's face, But all that matters is Batman. We roll against Batman's abilities, but we wanted our combat to be very much like these high-intensity comic book panels, right? And it's an ebb and flow. It's a give and take. You say what you want, roll the dice. I say what Tugga wants, roll the dice, right? And it'll be much, because then I could disarm him, right? I mean, he could roll a 1, bam, I've just disarmed him. Now he's facing Tugga, and all he's got is his shield. Now he's got to narrate how he's going to fight. And by the way, I changed the rules. If you do not have a weapon, it's a -2. If you do not have equipment, gear, or a weapon pertinent to the thing you're trying to do, it's a -2 automatically. So that way, because if not, there's no point. There's no point in having gear. So it dawned on me, if you want to climb and you don't have a rope, it's -2.
Yeah.
That way you need a rope, right? And then you want a good rope, because it gives you a +1, right? If you have an excellent rope, right, that kind of thing. So, by the way, just to let you know, there are now negatives for not having the appropriate tools. I'm going to build a fire. I can do it with stick and stone, but if I had flint and tinder, a little easier to build a fire, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's
we have to have negatives that make a challenge if they don't have gear, or like I said, if I disarm Ripa by saying it, Tugga is, his goal is to disarm you, and he rolls and fails, right? He's without a weapon. He can now narrate that he's scrambling around to pick up a weapon, or he can narrate he's going to use his shield to bash him, or it becomes that way. I can challenge Jory, even though he's got advantage, right?
Yeah. As far as a lot of times you don't even really need the roll if they don't have the equipment part. You know what I mean? Right. Like the flint, maybe you can get a stick or whatever like that. But yeah, you're dealing with. Like you said, it's a natural negatives need to be applied.
Yeah, that's a bad example. If somebody says, "Hey, we're going to make camp," I'm not going to say roll to build a fire. But let's say they're freezing. They've been they lost
hypothermia,
or floating on the river all night long, and they pull themselves out of a freezing river, and they're freezing, and their body's affected by that, and their mind's affected by that, and they haven't had any sleep, and they go, "We're going to build a fire." I go, "Ooh."
Yeah, if the situation isn't optimal
now, cowboy.
Yeah, whenever your situation is at you at a detriment, then it needs to be automatically done that way.
Right.
But I mean, as far as the back and forth flow of combat, it had always meant to be where someone rolls, because both of them are colliding together.
Yeah.
And you could have where they both, conceptually the first time, there's been instances where people injure each other, but I didn't necessarily put that into the working of the dice.
Right.
Whenever I originally did it, but it was to see who gained that, like a foray of, coming together in combat and seeing who came out the better of it and backed up away from each other.
But you could have said like when you said make a mind check to see if he had lost his focus and killed his own. When he went into his if you're talking about the same thing I'm talking about, the rage, when he went into the battle rage.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
well,
you
well, I'm talking about just in general because every
oh
time somebody, if you're backing somebody down in combat situations, especially, and you've got the upper hand, you could be bashed. They could be retreating until the tide turns,
yep
which would be the advantage roll on the dice whenever it did happen. You
right
see what I'm saying? So then they take the lead in the steps toward that, and when they're rolling and they're building the momentum,
right
it would be that way. That's what I was essentially doing and
right
exercising during that time.
right
To say roll it, find out he hit him. Okay, well, you still got command of the situation,
hmm
and he's on the
hmm
retreat, basically.
hmm
Roll again, and let's see if you still press that advantage or not, if it switches and
right
swings over to him. And that's when the presenter would take over and then swing back and forth. So it wasn't
right
necessarily a back and forth for Ray, like your turn, my turn, your turn, my
right
turn. It was more like, let's see which way this
right
this
and you're free
goes.
to do that. That's one reason I don't want to write that the presenter always gets his turn. Matter of fact, in the rules I wrote, the presenter has the choice to
Yeah.
take action for the NPCs, but they don't have
Well,
to.
I mean, even when Jordan was fighting him, and what he did was bloody his nose up when he hit him, and I knew he was doing that because right after he did that, and he hit him with a plus, it was an at 12, and I said, well, right happens with this, you can tell he's just discombobulated up. He's got vertigo. He drops to his knees. Basically, he was there. He could have without any kind of test
Mhm.
just offed him,
Sure.
but then he just kneed him in the
Sure.
face and made him go back.
Right. As
So,
results, but those were because they were critical roles, critical successes.
oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
he made
Yeah. But if
critical
it had been
successes
all
on
he
that.
needed to hit him was a 7 and he was rolling 7s, 8s, it's a give and take combat, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and it would have been different. I think had boosted Tug up to a higher level
Right.
if I would have kept it within the
But and again, if we're using the rule
11
book,
combat.
yeah, and if
Yeah,
we're using the rule book, for instance, and Dave's playing outlaw, and we're in Dredgewater. I mean, one of the rules we got peasants, so I have peasants. I have shopkeepers is one of our bestiary. Well, if you have a critical failure when you're in some kind of combat with a shopkeeper or a craftsman or blacksmith or a peasant, if you have a critical failure against them, that they will call guards. They will call town soldiers, guards, etc. Right. So
yeah,
if we're not paying attention to those special abilities, we're doing a disservice to the game. Right. We wrote the game so there's consequences to their critical failures that aren't just made up on the spot.
well,
So, for instance, if David was harassing a blacksmith and was robbing a blacksmith and he made a roll, I say, okay, roll the dice to see if he rolls a 1 critical failure. That blacksmith, calls out for the town guard, the soldiers, etc. David could still kill him, but David's now going to be dealing with soldiers that are coming to running, right?
yeah, I just don't want to be the last word on what the context of that critical failure means,
But
as
I
in
think presenters
AKA
always
calling
have that.
soldiers.
Mhm.
That way.
Well, it could
That's
just
why I'm
call
more
out,
instead of
help, right,
prerequisites.
right,
Yeah, instead of prerequisites, I'm always in for suggestions
yeah.
because I don't want to pigeonhole somebody saying,
No, they're
to go
just
back to the book
abilities
lawyers
that
of
can,
saying like
right,
this is what the book says to do. Now we
right.
call law. No, I don't want you to be a stooge and follow the book. I
No,
want
no,
you to
no.
say this is.
But
I'm just saying.
if you get that
This.
murder hobo at your table who basically says, I'm gonna kill this fucker for not giving me a deal on the sword, because I've played with those guys.
Oh yeah, no, I have
The
to. Yeah.
presenter's got to have some tools to rein that shit in, right?
No, and I agree
Legally,
with you.
yeah,
I agree with you. I'm just
yeah,
saying that's a good example for like in town situations.
right,
So I agree with that as
yeah.
long as it's like a suggested, do something like this or do
Mhm,
something
mhm.
like, maybe if he's in the woods, some other,
Right. But it also gives them, it's like giving them a hint that, you can have these players arrested instead
yeah,
of just, narratively,
yeah,
they
you
have the
you can't,
power to just arrest the, because now we got a whole nother thing
which,
now. How are they going to get out of jail? Are they going to go to court? Are they going to go on trial? We can have a whole session devoted to putting David's
and
character on
you're right
trial.
about that because it brings up the fact that
How are we
it
going to
is
have
more
trials?
than just uninhibited
Right.
combat without any kind of consequences
Right.
because we are in a world. There wouldn't be
Well, and
scholars, there wouldn't be nobles
if
if
we
it
want to
was totally,
experience the law and order of
yeah.
England of 900, there's got to be times that players
It has to
may have to
it
face
has
the
to come to
consequences
bear.
for legal right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it needs to be prevalent and at least associated
Right.
or related to in the book, to where you
Right.
say this is actually what would happen.
This is an
Here.
option.
So it's a great
And
example.
it's an option, right?
Well, it's an example, it's a suggestion, but it
Yeah.
needs to be something followed through. I just meant, like, if
Yeah.
it's in the woods, it might be a different situation
Oh,
to
yeah.
where guards can't be called.
No.
There needs to be something
Yeah, it has
similarly
to be
appropriate.
contextual. Yeah, it would have to be contextual. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. So, because you get people that are so bound to what the rules exactly say,
Sure.
it isn't like that. A situation can arise where there's certain circumstances that can be more appropriate,
Right.
that have to be applied.
Sure.
I know it's a simple statement. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
but when people read something, they take it as gospel
Well,
text, and they
becomes literal. It becomes literal. Yeah.
yeah, they use it literally in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this game, that's why I would like to push more toward suggestive text,
Yeah.
but definitely, like, something needs to be done here to put this in check.
Right.
Something will be, and that's appropriately given in a town situation.
Sure.
Yeah, somebody would be called. There's lynch mobs. There's you get in, that's how you can lose prestige.
And the goal is to have that there, so it's not always GM fiat to call the lynch mob, right? Oh, I'm bringing in a lynch mob for your ass because you're being a dickhead, right? No, I mean there's kind of some rules there that stabilize those potential, and hopefully again you're not playing with people like that, but.
I mean that GM fiat is that it can go in deep as far as people being worried about
right
some presenter being overly having too much power.
Right.
I don't know that I've ever felt the need to I'm so entrenched in whenever that or get that random seed, I have to spend my time folding it into the situation.
Right.
That is more of a logical, resonance of what's going on in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't just do it with a mindset of taking out a party or being, So I don't know. Maybe that's just my point of view.
No,
I don't know
never.
what.
I never play that way. I don't play D&D in that mindset.
Yeah. I mean, I try to make it very appropriate and very logical for the situation and what would come up. And that's challenging to me. I think it almost makes it to where you playing the game and you presenting this world. And when something like that, you spend your time and effort and energy trying to fold it into the fiction.
Well, and I've always suspected those types of players are bored, or they.
But that's what I mean. You're not.
So you're hoping in a game like this, you get to make the character you want to play, and you get to exercise a little more freedom of how your character navigates through the world. That they're not bored with just being the fighter who can't negotiate, who has no way of negotiating a cheaper weapon or anything, because D&D doesn't put in the rules negotiation. So people get the original books, go, how do you negotiate? And you get some. You get some GM or DM that doesn't know his ass from his hole in the ground. Says there is no negotiation in Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. No, you're
that's all I'm.
Role play, goddammit.
That's all I'm saying, Jason. I want it to be primarily role play and the freedom of doing that, but we do need to have guidelines to where I'm not overly worried about somebody. It's like this game naturally to me when I'm explaining it, how my mind is like geared, and when I'm a presenter, is focus of my energy is to cultivate this world plausibly. That's my challenge in front of the people there. I'm not so busy. I'm sitting there thinking about ways. My mind isn't thinking about otherwise than what is going on and connecting the dots. So I'm not so bored that
my mind's there when I'm writing a rule book and thinking, we have to define some things. We have to give the presenter some guidelines. We have to give the players some rules so they know how the game works. So this stuff doesn't cross my mind when I'm presenting. I've done this now with how many different systems, and for 2 years, well, I took 11 months off, but for a year and a half, I was only running. Matter of fact, I think that all of my Island of Soul was naive. I mean, I was running random seed naive narrator in all my games. The last 18 months that I ran, all was random seeds naive narrator.
Yeah, if you're truly playing naive narrator in the game like it calls for, I don't think you're predisposed to go off other than to focus on organically building the world as you take each step into it. Right. So that I'm just saying, my hope is that is what is entrenched in everybody that sits in the presenter seat. And whenever you're playing, like I said, it's live action.
Yeah.
When you're playing there, it's very improvisational. You
Yep.
play off of one another.
Yep.
You play for situations. It is live in the moment. And when you jump in and say something, it's
Yep.
there.
Yep.
The moment passes, you're catching up.
Right.
So you're not sitting there on your phone.
Right.
You're there. So
Well, and
everybody
that's
don't
exactly
want to,
why
like
I
I
loved
said, guard at
ID
the table.
Well, and that's why I loved AIA and IDW.
Yeah, you didn't have
Because
those breaks to sit there.
The rules were one page, and it was a simple D6. You had a character with and when I said to you, roll your body, you knew you had to roll a 4 up. No, I failed, and I'm immediately narrating how you've lost control of your motorcycle and you flipped ass over head and take a wound for flipping your motorcycle, right? And then you're up dusting off.
Yeah.
The rules were so, and again, I've said it before. I probably wouldn't even to try to write this. I found what I wanted to play, IDW or AIA, right? But it's like, well, there's a certain gravitas and a certain weight to a world in which players can have a prestige score, right? That affects it. So yeah. But I mean, tomorrow I would run AIA for everything non-fantasy, and I'd run IDW for everything fantasy, and I wouldn't worry about prestige. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, whenever we're in this world, I think the attributes, and we've slimmed them down to be not the traditional 7 stats, but what is core to that and what you want to utilize. Right. And in a world where you can, in a setting to where you can, they're flexible enough that you can be certain types of characters within this world.
Well, we wanted to
swing your way.
We wanted to give them a place and a guidelines enough that Brian could come up with a 19-year-old Lord.
Yeah,
if this was IDW, and I said we're going to play IDW, Brian would have made his character and picked his little things, and he'd given him a name, and that's it. He would not have thought of being a 19-year-old Lord. He would have been a 16-year-old kid with a sword on a fantasy adventure. He would have never come up with a Lord because of prestige empowered him to come up with this character.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's a perfect example of it. To lend to more enriched characters.
Saverick, your hunter, that session.
Yeah,
you were able to make this kind of backwoods loner, hunter, trapsman, whatever, that lived on the edge of the, and he was as relevant in the context of the setting and the game we were headed, but completely and utterly different than Brian's nobleman, right?
Yeah, he acted differently within the world.
But I mean, even affected the world differently. Brian could build an army. He could call on the people who were sworn fealty to him and build an army.
You can do this from the start. Yeah, but most games you're still, I don't care what you play, you're still the same at the start of any like other system. You're still the same type player. You know what I mean? Until you reach a certain level, like you're saying, when you're leveling up, you're tearing up. This right here lets you start at the start with a full blown character, this fully realized, and then you go out and affect the world, and you can fluctuate. And your attributes can fluctuate, go up and down.
My Viking. If we play again with this kid, I mean, this trip has done honestly, Ragnvald must believe the gods are utterly against him. His first Viking trek, he's cursed by a witch. The boat was freaking sinking at his right under his feet. He finds a hole in the boat, right? He's cursed, and then he's almost killed, right? I mean, this 16-year-old kid has got to be evaluating his odds of surviving in the world, right? He's got to be thinking, how am I going to get on?
And probably a little paranoid if the other one's going to look at him since he believes he's the bane of the company,
right?
If they might suspect something.
Yeah, if this was the Navy, if this was the British Navy, they would have thrown my ass over.
Thrown him overboard. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
They would have said, "This guy's a fucking curse, man. Get him out of here!" Right?
Yeah, I mean that's. Yeah. I don't know. I love what we're doing here. That our attributes can inform in a basic level and be so flexible for so many different character types that you can imagine, and bring the relevance and life inside of these worlds. and then act them out.
Yeah.
Where I don't think AIA or AW or IW,
Right.
D can do that
Right.
on that level to have more fully
No,
realized.
it's not designed for that. It's designed for
No.
very fast, simple play. We took it to
Yeah.
a narrative. I mean, we took it to this player agency
narratively
narrative
to a
level,
different level.
in which the mechanics never got in our way. It was just 6. Okay, you kill the guy on the motorcycle, it blows up and rolls over, but you got another guy behind you chasing you, and and then I'd say roll the. It was just we were just going right.
And we
we'll
still try to
get
want to
there with
emulate
this.
that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to emulate that something that quick as narrative flow, but
I mean,
also,
to your point a minute ago about dreaming up. Robert made a high prestige character in that game, but he wasn't from Dredgewater, and he wasn't a landowning nobleman. Remember, Robert made a. He made a Casanova that was on the run because he had seduced
I remember
a
the game with
nobleman's
me
wife.
and Ivan and Robert.
Yeah.
When I took the head of the.
Right, but Robert made a guy with high prestige, but he obviously he was a higher class guy, but he was a scoundrel in that he seduced some nobleman's wife, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Again, you could have high prestige and not have to be a lord of a fief. You could high prestige, mercenary that's got a reputation, right?
Yeah, you could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love it. I love that it gives people, I think anybody will salivate at the moment when they think, oh, what could I make inside of this world and then put in there? And like I said, to me, that's the important part, to play these varying characters and see them come to life and see them deal with problems that are beset them and their company and their group or individually or what have you, and see what they do with them.
Yeah.
And I think that the players really enjoy what will they do. And you want to earnestly, authentically play this character. You get caught up in it. And it's not just, you're not just preoccupied with, what are my bonuses in killing this thing here?
Yeah.
You're really invested in this character. Like Robert, if he's a Casanova, what if he gets caught in a situation where he's trying to talk himself out?
And proof's in the
with
pudding.
A wife, another noble.
And the proof's in the pudding. On our channel, Brian ran our game in our system first time. Beautiful.
The Frail Farm, yep.
Kevin on Halloween, first time he ever read our book and ran a brilliant game too, right? Both brilliant games.
You're
and
right.
Kevin's
I didn't really
game, dude. The interplay between characters because of that dilemma, we end up in front of the king and queen. I tried to talk Jory's character. I tried to talk everybody into help lying with me. And it was that shit. I'm sorry, but I don't know if that happens.
Happens otherwise. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know if that happens in a system where we could be characters that could be successful and not be a combat driven.
Because you're supposed to be for the party. He had to be for that character. He said, what would this character do? He had to be honest.
Yeah.
You are playing this character and you don't want to play it dishonest because you're so invested.
I was being authentic as well when I said, listen, this could
it's
go really bad for us if she dies from food poisoning because she ate. I mean, when Kevin said, I was so in character when Kevin said you look over and she's eating those fucking berries, man. My character literally shit his pants. I was like, fuck, I'm gonna die. I mean, how invested was I that I was then thinking I'm gonna be hung. I'm gonna be drawn and quartered by the king, right?
You just had a finger taken.
Yeah.
Your bow finger too. I know. I knew when he said that.
So damn good though. It was so.
I know.
And Brian's game, dude, it was fantastic. I mean, and that's also because they're good GMs, right? I mean, they're brilliant. They're brilliant players, great GMs, but it's like these guys had never seen really our game. They had not. It was the first time they ran it straight up, and it's like, okay, it proves that it works.
But I think there's plenty of, once you get the gist of it or understand it, there's plenty of good GMs there. I think they can do that. And once they get the ball rolling, and I think that there's certain players, I've always wondered about this, certain of the players' ability to go in character a lot. But once you get a taste of it, it's hard to go back.
Somebody could sit at the table with you and I in this and be a third person player. They don't have to be in first person dialogue, and I would argue most people aren't. I go in and out of first person. I sometimes say, well, I reach down and grab my sword, and I describe my actions in third person, that kind of thing, very often, because we're in a face to face. We're not in a face to face table where I can mimic it or.
But this affords you more opportunity to go. I see.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying. A great deal more so than just wait a minute. We'll tell you when it's your turn to roll dice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a what I mean, necessarily a tactically based wartime simulation, primarily with like narrative stuff on the side. This is like, let's deal with consequences. You could deal with them like really in character if you want to, or just from the character's mindset. But you're going to be playing that character authentically and representing them with their actions. Whether or not you say it in an in-character voice or not is not really there.
Right.
But as long as your movement and your thoughts and what they say, what I'm saying is you're vested, so you're going to be representing that character accordingly to the situation. And I love the fact that you could be inside of a party and you might have differences within that party with the other party members. Like you enjoy it. You're going, you're looking at him like, I need you to say yes on this. And he goes, what the crap? You know what I mean? Because it wasn't like automatically, wait a minute, the rule right here says that everybody in the party has to have an agreement because we're in a party together.
No, we were all characters. We were all characters that were called on by the king to escort his daughter. And we fucked up. And we all dealt with it like real people, people with personalities deal with shit like that, right?
Yes, it's what would naturally occur.
We were all in always more. Donnie's reaction and how she was.
Yeah, there's been a lot of games you sit and think about it that we've had really good times and naturally occurring for our character, and more people playing a character that would naturally. Like I said, authentically represent that character, and you go like, "Oh Lord!" And that character is more informed and detailed because they've conjured them up themselves and they put them in the setting with other characters, and then you will see where it goes, and that's the joy of it. You can't really see where character development happens. Like in a story, when you're watching a movie, you really have more invested in that movie when there's character development, and you can get invested and endure and sympathize with characters that you really get to know. And this is what we're allowing and what we're trying to push forward here. Ultimately, to me, and it like what you said about it might be difficult to teach people to be in that mind space, or how would you write it in text to get it over?
I don't know about teaching people. It's you want people to come to the game thinking like they're standing in the mud in Dredgewater, surrounded by the world. And
drop into those shoes.
Not every answer is your plate mail armor with your two-handed sword and when do I roll initiative to, right?
You want to drop them in those shoes and say
one
this is where
route
you are.
Generally to success in that style of game, and it's just all of it's going to lead to the next combat and the next combat and the next. Right? You want somebody in that frame of mind where they go, wait a minute, there's another way around this dilemma, or hey. I'm not even gonna embrace this dilemma, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go hide, or I'm gonna talk my way out of it, or I'm gonna do whatever.
Right.
You want to be challenged with life and circumstances and situations.
I think in that first game,
that's what you come to the table for.
I sat, you went in there, you were at the tavern or whatever, and I said, "There's a guy over there claims he's the rightful king," and you didn't believe him.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then he left and ended up, I can't remember what happened to him, but something happened to him. He never came back, and you were stuck with his little sister up there, who's the princess. But there was an example of a scene where I put this guy in front of you and says, listen, I need your help. I need mercenaries. I'm the rightful king to blah, blah, blah. And you said, bullshit. And you ignored that seed, right? But because you ignored it, that night, banging on the door, some little girl banging on your door at the tavern going, my brother never came home last night, right? You went to hire mercenaries. If I remember right, and you said, "Oh shit, I'll go look for your brother," right? And then I think you then ended up on some trek across. You ended up going east across the river.
That's what the sword. I had to choose to keep her the sword or whatever like that is.
That was the flood. But what was funny is it's just this was what was so great about the random seeds is they end up shit comes up like it does every day in your life, right? Like I might
Exactly. You got to contend and deal with it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I mean, you're a person in this world, and you have in your mind what this person's built are, and what their ideals are, and you get to experience and play somebody outside the headspace of your own worldviews and point of views, and try to understand somebody
there
else.
There are a million ways to solve the problem, not just the sword, or not just
exactly. And then crap pops up on them, like you're saying a flat tire or anything else in your description the other day, just like it does in your life, and you go, how is this person going to deal with it? And it's a joy trying to figure that out.
Right.
And that's why you will play them authentically, and you'll want to know where it goes. You'll get endeared to them, and you'll say, crap. Like whether it's a romantic scoundrel like Robert's character or whatever, trying to, sleep with noble wives and get away by the. What do you want to play? What do you want to be in this world? And you get to experience that. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Well, and Eric, I made a blacksmith, and right out of the gate, I put him to work, right? Because they were all getting ready for the big joust and the big fete, and they were coming to him and said, I need my swords done. I need this done. I need that done. Then Brian went down there and said, I need you to work on. So Eric was, doing blacksmith shit, for the first, when the Raiders actually, when the Sea Peoples, I rolled on the chart, Sea Peoples attack, we were setting up for, because I think the first roll I rolled was the fete. They were having the springtime harvest, fate.
Yeah.
And so all that was kind of set up on the first roll. And then the next roll it was Sea People's attack. So I had to describe coming out of the woods and shit, running. And Eric's standing down there with an anvil and a hammer going, oh shit, here come the Vikings. And I think you guys were all talking to the Washburn's man at arms. You guys were all inside the palisade when they hit.
Yeah, I think I was on the palisade.
You ended up fighting.
Right.
From the walls,
and maybe directing. I think Brian's character was directing from that.
That's right.
You're right. So you gave him, from his prestige, he influenced the overall defense of that wall.
Yeah, because was it you that was in a, or was that Ivan? That was one of the games. Somebody was in a wheelbarrow and they were rolling them. Was that Ivan?
Oh my God!
I can't remember.
That sounds like him.
It started with somebody was in a wheelbarrow rolling bodies, dumping bodies from the previous fight.
Oh, dude, I think one of them was, because I was one of the bodies laying there, and I woke up.
And you weren't dead, right? You weren't dead.
Yeah, that a raven was on my chest and was looking at me.
I can't remember. But, I mean, in just the handful of games we've played this way, so much memorable stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think there's really, like that, like I said, that tie to characters that you feel are more, that you get to create, and you feel more akin to, more fully fleshed out and understandable, and somebody that you desire to play.
Right. And
then you can experience from their eyes in a world where they have to deal with circumstances the same way you do.
Right.
And then you know, and it's something with the random scenes, the way they crop up is drops just like life.
Yeah.
Right in front of you. It don't feel orchestrated or like scripted.
Well, and how many of you rolled that the players never really engaged in? I've rolled a lot that the players don't have to engage in.
Well,
I've rolled a lot that they miss the hint. They'll miss the hint that there's something, and the players will ignore it, and so that's the other beautiful thing.
They go on their own way.
Well, they're doing whatever they're doing, and it's not a priority for them.
But like you say, the more games go by, the more it leaves that wake of what you could draw from, or the wreckage rather, that you could draw from, and then put in front of them again. Say,
well, or if the players, for instance, if we had gone on to the next session of the Viking, when you've negotiated with the Vikings, we're going to clear out that, because you knew, I think you and David learned that particular keep had, you heard rumors that vampires were in that keep, and you sent the Viking to clear out the vampires.
Well, that was me. I knew he would. I knew they would probably hurt each other, but nevertheless, I knew that kingdom that I was with, he would be owing Donegal to the Vikings to come back, and then that would weaken him as I got the new area, or somebody was going to die, but it was going to leave me in a better position to be burnt higher.
But the point is, the second, third session, you guys would have had a potential then to pursue, establishing your own fiefdom there, right? And you guys,
I would have probably screwed over
players that have goals. You're motivated, but then you have goals as authentic, ambitious characters in a world you want to achieve, and then you make random seeds centered around what the characters are clearly preoccupied by.
Exactly, man. I would have pushed with that character. I would have probably, I would have felt out each character. So I made a no when he said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
About like turning to Christianity because it almost jeopardized the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have probably offered David something, but then I would have felt literally read their characters that they were playing to see if they would have been
and remember,
more than somebody that I wanted to take it along with me as I took over this new fiefdom.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise,
and remember how I handled that. That was a legitimate. I had a legitimate Viking with legitimate wants, desires. He was a real character. Yeah. We negotiated for 25, 30 minutes before I asked you guys to make one roll. One roll.
Yeah, that was awesome.
There was no roll. I mean, we had a legitimate, and then it was like, finally, somebody was going to have to roll those dice. And I think it was David that made the final roll, wasn't it? Or you?
Hell, David got up, and then the guy that was, there was somebody that he had captured, right? And David's like,
no, it was the Baron who just gave up.
Oh, yeah, and he put the Baron, he was like, you better redeem yourself by slipping a knife into the Viking, and I was like, oh my God, I'm trying to broker some kind of deal. Todd's over there. You can probably see my face whenever each of them, you could tell in their own mind they had things working. Yeah. Todd's going like, he was invested in his character. He's like, no, you all need to, if we're going to do this, what he's pushing for, you all need to convert to Christianity.
Yeah.
And when I'm sitting there going like, oh man, you're just making a harder thing. I almost had him on the road. He's almost signing the dotted line. And then David's like, you need to do this. You probably see my face going, crap. Because it's like, I felt like I almost had a victory there. And like I said, I was going to have my own fiefdom, and these guys are jeopardizing it.
Right.
I was wanting to keep them in the dark. Right. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just it. At some point, you might have had to, at some point, tell them, gentlemen, there's some serious shit at stake here, right? But that's the whole point. You could keep that stuff to yourself.
I couldn't tell them like in front of the Viking.
No. I mean, you would almost have to say, time out, we got to huddle up, But that's the other thing about putting it in a live situation. You would have had to look at the Viking and say, we need time to discuss this in private, and the Viking may or may not.
I know, man, but it was so I didn't want to say it to him. I felt like I was
and think about this. That went on for 30 minutes, and I never let you guys do the player strategy chit chat.
No, and it was beautiful.
You were at a table with a Viking who heard everything you said.
I know. I was working my own. Yeah. My own
so there was none of that time out. Let's all discuss our strategy here, right?
No,
you guys, I couldn't believe it. Before you went into the
all
Viking,
had our own agenda.
And I remember thinking, they didn't discuss this before they went in to see the Viking.
Dude, I had my own agenda. I purposely didn't discuss it with them.
So it's like all three of you showed up. Oh, by the way, with the king's son. Remember, the young son was behind you.
At most, I was telling them just to shut up and let me deal with it, right?
Yeah,
that's at most of what I said.
You guys never even discussed how you were gonna deal with this.
That was purposeful. On my end, I wanted them in the dark as possible. I said, because I was thinking about that whole note that I picked up the first day. I was like, if I can get this Viking off the land and go and attack in there, we'll say that we got 30 silver or 700 or silver, you know what I mean? And then we'll do whatever. But see, there was
the look on Todd's face when I described that they had burned all the.
I know you were killing me.
They had burned all the priests, and Todd. I could just see Todd's face because Todd plays in character too. It's like his face went.
I know.
And I said, "Oh shit, Todd's pissed. Todd's character's pissed."
But I felt that his character was ticked, and so I'm sitting here going like, "Don't say anything. If I can wrap this up as quick as possible." My mind's literally. Yeah, I'd love to see that session again because when I say that,
it's on the channel somewhere. Yeah,
you see me wince and go like, "Geez, please." How's this going to play with this fight? Because it was a real live.
It was fun, And watching David then had to go over and convince the Baron to kill himself or kill the Viking. Remember?
Oh, I know that was beautiful. But
he was killing David. He didn't want to have to tell that guy you should kill yourself if you can't kill the Viking.
Yeah,
I could just see David's like, oh, I don't. But that was all David. He's like, okay, I gotta try this. We gotta get somebody to take this guy out.
Yeah, exactly. It was beautiful, man. It was beautiful, and allows us to play that way. So,
so what I said, as a player, doing this way, whether it was with our game, we've had great sessions. Even again, you running them, me running them, Brian running them, Kevin running them. It's been amazing.
Yeah, Yeah, I would love for other people like David needs to run this or
Yeah, I
whoever.
didn't know I don't think
Todd
Todd's
or
run it.
anybody.
Has Todd run it?
That's what I kind of was reluctant saying that. I can't remember. I don't
I
think
can't
he
remember
has.
if he did. No.
But he may have. I know David. I don't think David has.
No.
I can't. Maybe Justin has. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
But yeah, I'd like some new blood to pick it up, look at the rules, and then roll with it.
Sure.
But
yeah, part of
yeah,
playtest is to get feedback from people who try the Presenter C.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it easy or is it hard? Right. And Kevin and Brian, I think, both made it look easy. But it's not.
That was hard. That was real heartening there. And it gave me, because it's once you understand it, it's easy to do. It's natural. It's intuitive. Yeah. I think people have to get over the fact of maybe this stage fright or shot, and of just letting loose and rolling that way.
I think it's very hard to not have a plan for guys, even guys who open world sandbox, slightly different. It's hex crawl, so it's pretty open to dice rolls, wandering monsters, where are you going? But I think it's pretty intimidating to think that you're going to sit down with a group of players who are characters in an established scene or scenario and roll dice that you got to somehow make sense of and get it rolled in pretty quick and in a realistic way, an organic way. And then you just don't know where it's going to. You got to kind of keep doing it as it just goes, right?
Well, that's what they was saying about. That's what I recognized last night. Even though when I was playing it, I had put myself in a situation where I was trying to narrate the characters that y'all were associated with and be the presenter of the world and play sort of the characters of the other two and how their reactions are going to play out. And I still wasn't overwhelmed. You know what I mean? I was still able to do it. So it even going that far, you can still do it effectively.
Right.
It isn't really a hard jump just to say, look, because it's almost like your eyes are opening wide in the first place. Well, this is what's happening in front of y'all. And you always get surprised. You go like, oh, y'all were doing that. Well, let's see what happens. And you see what happens together. Yeah. So it's not like you have to have this long-term plan. You just do what makes logical sense and occurs with the words that come in front of you. Well, this is what you're seeing. So it's really not as imposing as someone would take it at first blush.
No.
Jason, I'll have to tell you that I literally like on 2 or 1% of this battery. I didn't bring that.
Yeah, it's like 10 o'clock your house, right?
Oh, geez. But anyway, no. Just want to let you know in case it drops off. But might need to wrap it up. Maybe we can play some tomorrow, have some more chat or something.
Yeah, I mean, I get home my time noon, which would be 2 o'clock your time, and then I'm pretty much free. So we could probably we could probably do something.
Yeah, we'll play it by ear and see what goes. And like I said, I'd love for one of the other guys to play it, but definitely that last session taught me a lot of what not ifs, but gives me a lot of hope for what the game is in particular. You know what I mean?
God, yeah.
You know, if I was pushing off in different areas or trying to test
I mean,
the waters here or there.
The only thing, the one thing I'll be doing will be absolutely cognizant of when I run the next session of Dark Age of Man. I will prompt with easy, fair, hard, so players just have a sense of what they're rolling.
And I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
And that just also it lets us all know whether the game, if people are killing hard rolls, then the game isn't hard, right? If they're killing, if they're banging out hard rolls all the time, then we got something wrong with our weight. And
I knew it was flexible.
Yeah, and I'll try to track. The and then of course we need to test. Some of these new modifiers, right? The gear modifiers, the negative modifiers, and then I'll try to track mathematically everything when I run next.
Yeah.
So
it sounds good.
I think it works. I mean, I just took the same percentages from the original die 20 book and said, okay, this correlates basically in the die 12 to this percentage on the die 12. So the math should be fine. Yeah. So, but we may find out something's too hard or too easy. But again, I don't think so. A dragon should be hard. First, entry-level characters that see or face a dragon should know they're probably going to die.
Yeah,
like any fantasy game, you don't want to be, you don't want to be tangling with a dragon in the first, few levels.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, I think players are pretty savvy to know that, like the Bog Witch, that's pretty intense. In our book, that she's one of the hardest.
Yeah.
She's one of the highest difficulty levels, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now she doesn't have to be that difficult. Your Bog Witch could have been a lesser Bog Witch, right?
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
all right, man. It's like 10:30 at your house, so I guess you should go to bed, don't you?
Yeah. Probably so. But it's always good talking with you and
brother.
catching up.
Another great
We're
chat,
hammering it
man.
out.
Awesome, man.
All right, man.
Be safe, and then I'll check in with you tomorrow when I get home.
Hey, happy 4th, bye.
Oh yeah, you too, bro.
All right, take care, man.
See ya.
All right.